Hi, I'm Jess Engleking with Soundings Fine Audio in Denver, Colorado. And today I wanted to talk about a question that people ask me very often in the store, which is this stuff worth it? Can I hear the difference between cheaper audio equipment and really high-end equipment? Well, I'll cut to the chase and say, yes, I think it is worth it in a lot of ways, but we'll kind of break down a few of the major issues that I think come into play, and there's kind of a couple bigger things that are related to this that I wanted to touch on. The first thing is just how good is human hearing? Human hearing is actually really, really good. We have a couple different types of methods of actually taking sound from outside and putting it through our brain and processing it. We have these little tiny hairs floating in fluid, and as the fluid moves, it moves these hairs and we pick up on certain frequencies. We also have bones inside of our ear that vibrate at other frequencies, and through this combination, that's how we pick up sound. People have talked about hearing bass in their chest where they really feel it. There's a tactile thing. So yeah, we're really sensitive to all of these different types of sound. You know, even sitting here in the store, if there happened to be a car accident or a big crash or just any kind of loud noise outside, any of us sitting in this room would know which direction it came from. And as long as you retain that type of localization for hearing, I think you're really going to be able to appreciate what a lot of this different audio equipment can bring to the table. One of the other things that comes out is your reference. What is your reference for good sound? If you're comparing things to another piece of stereo equipment, that may not be the way to go. At Soundings, we're trying to compare to the real thing, right? And that's somewhat subjective, and that's okay. But if you're thinking about, does this system make me feel like I'm at a live show, that can happen at all kinds of different dollar amounts. And if you're thinking about, is this real, or are you thinking about, is this a speaker, that's really going to change your compass as to whether it's good enough or not. When I was first getting into this hobby, one of my friends and early stereo mentors, Eric, I was buying used equipment from him and hand-me-downs and things that he would get on trade-in, and I would constantly be looking for the next thing. And after doing this for several months, maybe even over a year of getting new cables, new speakers, new amps, you name it, just trying to get better sound, he actually stopped me and said, "When was the last time you saw a live show? When was the last time you were at a real performance? Do you even remember what it sounded like?" And I had to stop and think. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm really chasing my tail here. I'm trying to make my system sound better, but I had kind of lost sight of what the real thing was, which is music. I mean, that's what it's about. I'm trying to get this connection to a show that may not be playing in my town, to a band that I may not be able to see anymore, or a singer that just doesn't tour, whatever the case may be. He brought up a really good point. Do I even remember what the real thing sounds like? So when I'm trying to get better bass, or I'm trying to get clearer highs, or does this piano sound like a real piano, I'd lost my reference. And so I started going to a lot more shows. That really changed the way that I felt about upgrading my system. I've started going to the symphony more often. I have friends and relatives that play real instruments. And when you hear the real thing in front of you, it's a reminder that, you know, sometimes getting perfect sound for stereo, we're really going after the wrong thing, or maybe just the wrong thing for you. I had a client who had a really awesome Bosendorfer piano. We were doing an installation, and he was gracious enough to actually start playing while we were doing the install. It was incredible. I mean, a very uncommon piano with a pretty good pianist. And when I got up next to the piano when he was playing, it started to hurt my ears a little bit. And it just dawned on me. I'm like, you know what? Sometimes the brightness of speakers might actually be reproducing the real thing. The impact of those high notes, the impact of the bass notes from the piano caught me off guard. There were some notes that made me feel the same way that a speaker did. And it made me think really hard about what I really want out of my stereo system. So after you've recalibrated your sound, or your hearing rather, think about what you're trying to get out of the system. If you're trying to get something that sounds real, or are you trying to get something that connects to the music? You know, these are all things that I think factor into, can you hear the difference, and is this thing worth it? You got to know what you're really shooting for. Is the music going to be the activity, or is this something that's just going to be in the background? All of these things will make a difference. If it's just going to be something that's on in the background while you're cooking dinner, then hard to say whether that $100,000 speaker is really going to be the right thing. versus if you're sitting down every evening and putting a record on because this is your time to relax and you're going to close your eyes and drift away, you're probably going to notice a little more nuance to the whole equation. So getting down to it, really what it is this worth the money? Because I think anybody would be able to hear the difference, but is it worth your dollars? And I think that's a very personal question that sometimes we just have to look inward and say, is this worth it to me? Because if you look at cars, is a Ferrari worth more than a Porsche? Is a Porsche worth more than a Corvette? Is a Lexus worth more than a Toyota? Well, it just depends on how you drive in that case. And I think with music and as a hobby, with stereo equipment, I think it's the same kind of thing. I think ultimately better is better, but you have to ask yourself, how am I going to be enjoying this? What is my reference, and does it need to change in order to get the most out of the hobby? Or maybe you're one of the lucky few that's already had that calibrated and puts you on the right path. But this is a question that I get asked a lot in the store, so it is something that I just kind of wanted to revisit, and I think it might get some gears turning for some people to really think about how they're enjoying their hobby, because it can be really frustrating to look for that right piece of equipment, and I think that's why a lot of people end up chasing their tails. If you have the right goal, it's a lot easier to march towards it. I would really recommend get out to your dealer. As always, just try to get some guidance, listening to some equipment. You can move up the food chain and you'll get to a point where it'll sound better, but maybe it just stops making financial sense. That's going to be a different target for just about everybody. That we'll find some dollar figures that you'll hear the difference, but man, it's not worth mortgaging my house over. Whereas other people, it's like the sky opens up and they find religion in this one piece of equipment or this one pair of speakers. So again, very, very individual. So kind of a shorter video this week, but as always, I really appreciate everyone who tuned in. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.